On this Sunday night, the big hit for small businesses. The bottom line before they bottom out.
And it's nearly impossible to move all those sales to online.
The economic crisis as Christmas approaches. The rent subsidy revamped.
Finally, 8 months into the pandemic.
Could this be the relief for businesses on the edge of bankruptcy? Plus, the hills are alive with skiers. But how do they socially distance? And getting Disney to get Indigenous roles right.
Actively trying to bring more diversity to their content.
The Canadian producer shaking things up in Hollywood.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with breaking news and another record shattered in Alberta. That province is now reporting the highest daily number of COVID-19 cases than anywhere else in Canada. Alberta recorded nearly 1,600 cases today, a record for the fourth day in a row. And that's more than Ontario, which has 3 times the population. That province had more than 1,500 cases today. We're on the cusp of the holiday season, but so many of our plans are on hold. Provinces are either implementing more restrictions or going into lockdown. And caught in the middle, businesses struggling to meet the bottom line. As Global's Marnie Blunt reports, it may be too late to pivot to save them.
The holiday shopping season looks a lot different this year, with many Canadian stores under lock and key.
Well, it impacts it greatly, and I just have to pivot. I have to move in a different direction and do what I can to keep my business going. I've been doing a lot of virtual appointments with people where I actually take them around my store with my phone.
In Manitoba, businesses can stay open to sell essential items only, and the province has taken extra measures to make sure big box stores that remain open can't skirt the rules.
Remember that the right to shop is not as important as the right to life.
But in Quebec, shoppers filled the streets Sunday, lining up outside stores.
Well, we have nothing else to do, due to Corona, so we're just going out on Sundays, having fun,
Honestly, it's pretty busy, and most people are wearing masks, so it's not too bad.
On Monday, Toronto and the nearby Peel region joined Manitoba in banning in-store shopping for non-essential items, forcing many businesses to rely solely on online sales over the key holiday shopping season.
It's a lose-lose for everyone in Manitoba right now, and it's a win for the Amazons of the world.
The Retail Council of Canada says pivoting to online sales is easier said than done for many businesses.
They still rely on their brick and mortar store, and it's nearly impossible to move all those sales to online.
Industry experts say right now the best way to help is by shopping local this holiday season and doing your part to ensure the virus gets under control and these businesses can open their doors once again. Robin?
Marnie Blunt in Winnipeg. Thanks, Marnie. Tomorrow, a new aid program goes into effect in a bid to save businesses on the brink. The rent subsidy was first introduced in April, but it was up to landlords to apply. Now the federal government has changed the rules to make tenants eligible. David Aiken explains.
The federal government has left lockdown decisions up to local health officials, while promising to be the financial backstop for those affected by lockdown decisions.
The federal government will be there, as we have since the beginning, to support those communities, those individuals, those small businesses.
And to that end, Ottawa has a new program to help businesses, charities, and nonprofits pay the rent. Applications open Monday.
Finally, 8 months into the pandemic, Canada finally has a decent rent support program.
The new Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy is aimed at providing rent and mortgage interest relief directly to commercial tenants and property owners. Organizations can apply to Revenue Canada for a subsidy of up to 65% of eligible expenses incurred from September forward. And those organizations closed because of a public health order can qualify for a 25% top-up, effectively giving them a 90% subsidy.
That is good news. It will make the difference in terms of allowing some firms to get through what we expect to be just a brutal December for so many small firms.
The new rent subsidy program will run at least until next June, though there may be changes in the new year. But more may be needed, and opposition politicians in Ottawa will push for those changes this week in the House of Commons.
I absolutely believe that the public health advice to stay at home is essential. But what that public health advice has to be coupled with is an understanding of the reality that people are faced with.
Business groups say the rent subsidy program can be improved by making it retroactive to the spring.
The number one question we're getting from small business owners is, great that my go forward rent may be partly covered, but what do I do with the $100,000 worth of rent debt that is still haunting me as a business owner?
And even with the improved business aid programs, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business believes as many as 200,000 small businesses will be forced to shut their doors for good before this pandemic ends. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
You only have to look to Nunavut to see how quickly COVID-19 can spread. Just over 2 weeks ago, the territory had no cases. Now, there are 128. In the last 24 hours alone, Nunavut recorded 21 new cases. Most of them are in the community of Arviat. Arviat, a hamlet of 2,600 people, now has a total of 98 COVID-19 infections. There are also new cases in Rankin Inlet and Whale Cove. We have been warned against non-essential travel, but Hawaii wants to form a bubble with Canada. The Aloha State is extending a pre-testing travel program so Canadians can vacation there without a 14-day quarantine. Mike LeCouture explains how it works.
Every year, about 500,000 Canadians visit the picturesque beaches of Hawaii. COVID-19 closed borders for non-essential travel between Canada and the United States, but residents of our country will soon be allowed back to the Aloha State.
Beginning in mid-December, travelers flying from Canada to Hawaii may bypass the state's 14-day quarantine if they take the COVID-19 test from labs identified by Air Canada and WestJet.
The key is those rapid tests. Travelers will have to get a negative result within 72 hours of departure to avoid quarantine when they arrive. WestJet has partnered with DynaLife Labs, the same company that did all of the testing for the NHL bubble.
Obviously, it's not as many flights as we would have liked, 9 directs per week. Pre-COVID, we would have had a lot more traffic, but we think this is a really good step in the right direction.
I certainly have come into about 50 emails so far this morning.
Canadian travel consultant Claire Newell's inbox is already flooded with interested travelers. She believes rapid testing is the key to helping the airline industry take off again.
It's going to be necessary moving forward, especially with things like cruising. But we are a little bit behind some of the other countries.
Lufthansa Airlines has started a trial with free rapid testing for all passengers on flights between Munich and Hamburg, Germany. Canada's agreement with Hawaii creates a kind of travel bubble with the state. Mainland USA and Japan were part of the original test run in October. Despite allowing visitors, Hawaii remains the state with the lowest per capita incidence of COVID-19. And while the governor admits allowing more visitors could create an uptick in cases, he says they are creating travel bubbles within hotels and other destinations.
So that should someone after arrival become ill or symptomatic, that we can provide them health care, be able to test them if needed, and then most importantly, able to isolate and quarantine them.
And travel consultants say your last layer of protection is to buy health insurance just in case you get sick while on vacation. Mike LeCouture, Global News.
The speed at which new cases are multiplying in the United States is unsettling. As of today, there are 12.2 million cases confirmed in that country. Nearly 1/4 of those infections emerged in November. Before that, it took just over 2 weeks for cases to jump from 8 to 9 million by October 30th. By November 9th, there were 10 million. 7 days after that, 11 million, and less than a week to add another 1 million infections. The situation has left hospitals and morgues overwhelmed. Several states have imposed new restrictions, including California, where a curfew went into effect last night. But as Jennifer Johnson reports, members of the coronavirus task force have set the ambitious target of rolling out a vaccine by mid-December.
In California, angry residents took to the streets, defying the latest restrictions that ban non-essential work and gatherings after 10 p.m.
An illegal curfew, 10 o'clock curfew, we're not going to abide by it. It's ridiculous.
To further try and stop the rapid spread of COVID-19, it's now an early last call for bars desperate for business.
We were staying open till midnight to try to get a little bit of that bar crowd, but that is not the case anymore.
In Minnesota, hundreds of protesters demonstrated outside Governor Tim Walz's home after he ordered gyms to close, youth sports to stop, and bars and restaurants to do takeout only. Angry protests in Washington state, too, after the Centers for Disease Control recommended Americans stay home this holiday season.
We're going to have Thanksgiving with our family, and you're not going to tell us otherwise.
Governors across the U.S. forced to take drastic measures again as new cases of COVID-19 dramatically spike. Air Force medical personnel and the Texas National Guard have been deployed to overwhelmed El Paso hospitals and the local morgue.
We hit the ground running and started working in some of the critical care sections in the emergency medicine rooms. A lot of the people I work with have described it similar to Afghanistan, Iraq.
The federal government is fast-tracking a new COVID-19 vaccine, hoping healthcare workers could get the first dose by mid-December.
On the 11th or on the 12th of December, hopefully, the first people will be immunized across the United States, across all states.
But U.S. President Donald Trump is still blocking the transition to President-elect Joe Biden.
There's a lot of focus on that vaccine rollout plan that's going to be critical in the early days of a Biden presidency. We have no access to that.
No official response on that from the White House, but the head of President Trump's Operation Warp Speed says he's been told not to disclose confidential information to anyone outside the present administration. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has revealed plans to end the UK's 4-week lockdown next month. The United Kingdom has the worst death toll from COVID-19 in Europe. More than 54,000 people have died. Beginning December 2nd, there will be a return to the 3-tiered system of restrictions. Areas will face different measures depending on the severity of their outbreaks.
Christmas is not going to be normal this year, but that said, the Prime Minister and everyone else were looking at ways to see how families can spend some time with each other over Christmas period. Obviously, that's something that we would like to do.
The Prime Minister's office confirmed plans to begin a nationwide vaccination program next month, assuming regulators approve a COVID-19 vaccine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined his G20 counterparts in pledging vaccine access to all, to ensure poorer countries aren't left behind in the rollout. The virtual summit, hosted by Saudi Arabia, wrapped up with a promise to extend debt relief to developing nations. Also on the agenda, looking ahead to the post-pandemic economic recovery and tackling the climate crisis as the U.S. prepares for new leadership. President Donald Trump officially withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement earlier this month, and today he defended the move in prepared remarks.
To protect American workers, I withdrew the United States from the unfair and one-sided Paris Climate Accord, a very unfair act for the United States. The Paris Accord was not designed to save the environment. It was designed to kill the American economy.
Trump didn't take part in yesterday's virtual session, which focused on the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, he spent the day on his golf course, as he did again today. Coming up, social distancing and skiing, how to manage the crowds on the hills. And later, a Canadian producer is working with Disney to stop stereotyping Indigenous roles. A blast of winter hit Toronto today as a low-pressure system moves through Ontario. Between 10 to 20 centimeters of snow fell across the city right before it heads into lockdown tomorrow. Other regions of Ontario saw up to 30 centimeters of snowfall. Quebec is now bracing for snow as the system moves into that province overnight. It's been a busy start to ski season at a number of Canadian resorts. Take a look at Sunshine Village in Alberta.
And then back down there, oh my God! It is back all the way to here.
The ticket lines wrapped through the parking lot. The resort says it will now limit capacity. It shows the pent-up demand for skiers who had their ski season cut short when the pandemic hit in March. Heather Yerkes West shows us how ski hills are preparing to cope with crowds.
Faced with the prospect of a winter cooped up inside, the call of the mountains has perhaps never been so loud.
Excited to, get outside and do some fun and have some winter fun and have our season's passes and just ready to be out of the house.
It's early in the season and ski hills that have opened so far are seeing demand this year is high.
The weather cooperated. People want to come out, so people are coming in heaps and they want to ski, they want to have fun, they want to forget about all the madness what's going on in the city.
Most people who ski and snowboard here at Nikiska are from Alberta, but destination hills like Lake Louise and Whistler rely a lot more on international travelers. And this year, those travelers won't be able to come.
With the borders closed, we're obviously not getting the U.S. and international guests that we had in the past. But the increased interest in the local market, certainly, I think will probably make up for it.
Ski and board shops are noticing the increased demand, too. This Calgary business has seen sales rise 300% over last year.
So we're seeing anywhere from brand new skiers and boarders getting their first sets of gear to like snowbirds that aren't going south this year and decide to dust off the skis, get them tuned up and get their first season's pass they've had in several years.
But while skiers may be seeking an escape from the pandemic, even on the slopes, the threat of COVID-19 is still very much top of mind. Resorts like Vancouver's Grouse Mountain require guests wear masks and are operating lifts at reduced capacity.
You will need to reserve your Skyride time in advance. You can do that online. We are also recommending online ticket purchases.
Tents and other temporary structures are also being used to ensure people can warm up while keeping distant. Operators hoping that the measures they've taken will help them remain open through the season so that pandemic-weary Canadians have someplace safe to play. Heather Yerkes West, Global News, Kananaskis, Alberta.
Still ahead, the budget cuts that set off fury in Guatemala. A wave of anger and unrest in Guatemala tonight. Thousands of protesters took to the streets after the government passed a new budget that will cut spending for health care and education. Some demonstrators broke into Congress and set one part of the building on fire. They say the budget was negotiated in secret while the public was distracted by back-to-back hurricanes and the pandemic. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is giving rebel leaders in Tigray 72 hours to surrender peacefully before troops and tanks surround the region's capital. Ethiopian forces are preparing a major assault against the Tigray People's Liberation Front if they don't lay down their arms. The military is warning civilians caught in the crossfire to save themselves now because there will be no mercy for the rebel leaders who are accused of hiding among the general population. More than 36,000 refugees have fled Tigray into neighboring Sudan since the conflict broke out earlier this month. Ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh paid respects to the fallen today as they pick up the pieces following a 6-week war. Hundreds, possibly thousands of lives were lost after heavy fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the breakaway region. The enclave is situated within Azerbaijan's borders, but is largely populated by ethnic Armenians. A Russia-brokered ceasefire saw Azerbaijan take back control of territory it seized during the conflict. Today, Russian peacekeepers transported drinking water and other aid to residents in remote parts of the region. As part of the agreement to end the hostilities, Russia deployed about 2,000 troops to ensure the truce holds. Up next, Indigenous representation with a Hollywood powerhouse. We'll explain when Global National returns. It's not every day you get to work with one of Hollywood's most powerful players, but a small production company has teamed up with Disney to shed light on Indigenous youth. The company's CEO, Jacob Pratt, comes from a Saskatchewan First Nation. Now he's seizing a rare opportunity for Indigenous representation within the entertainment industry. Brady Ratzlaff explains.
Jacob Pratt loves to tell stories through the lens of a camera.
Hi.
His team at Skoden Entertainment in California recently signed a big deal with an even bigger company.
We were just getting up and running, and we landed Disney as our first major client.
That deal provided the platform for Pratt and his team to create 3 mini episodes featuring Indigenous youth.
One way that we make a difference is through our art.
As part of Native American Heritage Month, which is celebrated in the U.S. every November.
We wanted to share each one of those stories because they're so different, but also they're all advocates for Indigenous cultures and social justice.
Pratt was born on the Coati First Nation in Saskatchewan, but grew up on the George Gordon First Nation. He completed his business degree in Regina before making the move to Los Angeles to pursue a career in the entertainment industry. Pratt says Disney is working to move away from its past reputation of stereotyping some cultures, and this new deal is a way to bring more Indigenous material to the table that portrays his people in an authentic way.
They've come a long ways as an organization and have acknowledged their shortcomings in the past and have been actively trying to bring more diversity to their content, which is great for everybody.
He says the episodes are part of a series called Use Your Voice,
where young people that are making differences and trying to make a change within their community are being featured and their stories are being shared.
Members of his team say it's Pratt's attention to detail and passion for storytelling that makes him a great person to collaborate with.
We both had kind of the same goals and aspirations as far as telling stories in the creative space.
Pratt says there are ongoing discussions with Disney for more content. The episodes air on the Disney Channel and YouTube. Brady Ratzlaff, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Sunday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Lower Island Cove in Conception Bay North, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see your part of the country, so email your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.